"Your daughter is alive!" The hoarse, guttural voice tore through the oppressive silence of the mansion, making the crystal glass slip from Millionaire Arthur's hands. His eyes widened, fixed on Nocturno, the raven, who was furiously pecking at the dusty portrait of his little daughter, missing for months. A chilling shiver ran down his spine, as the memory of a muffled cry he swore he'd heard the night before returned with overwhelming force. And what he was about to discover would reveal a nightmare of cruelty nesting right under his own roof. Arthur felt the ground give way beneath his feet. The sound of crystal shattering on marble echoed like thunder in his empty chest, an unsettling omen. "Alive," he whispered. The word, almost imperceptible, a desperate prayer he barely dared to formulate. His eyes, previously clouded by chronic grief, now burned with a feverish intensity, fixed on Nocturno. The raven, as if understanding the magnitude of that moment, stopped pecking at the portrait. It tilted its head, its black pearly eyes fixed on Arthur's, and let out a low croak, almost an urgent lament, before swiftly flying to the millionaire's shoulder. Nocturno, with an unusual delicacy for a bird of its size, brushed its head against Arthur's neck, a gesture the man interpreted as strange comfort, but also as a silent, firm insistence. The raven then began to gently tug at his shirt collar, turning its head towards the door leading to the west corridor, a wing of the mansion that Sophia had insisted on keeping off-limits since their little daughter's disappearance, claiming it was to preserve the girl's untouched memories. Arthur had always accepted the explanation, swallowing the pain and emptiness his daughter's absence had left. But now, a different chill, one of suspicion and terror, ran deep within him. The image of Sophia, always so controlled and distant, flashed through his mind. The coldness that had settled between them after the girl's loss was almost palpable, an abyss Arthur had attributed to mutual grief, but which now seemed to have a much darker origin. He remembered Sophia's furtive glances, her mysterious outings, her whispered phone conversations, small details that, at the time, he had dismissed as manifestations of grief, now rearranged themselves in his mind like pieces of a macabre and cruel puzzle. "What do you want to show me, Nocturno?" Arthur asked, his voice thick with emotion. The raven croaked again, louder this time, and tugged at his shirt with more force, pointing decisively towards the corridor. Arthur felt a knot in his throat. Hope, a feeling he thought had died with his daughter's supposed loss, began to sprout in his chest, mixed with an overwhelming fear. What if Nocturno was right? What if his daughter was alive? The idea was so grand, so miraculous, it seemed almost cruel to conceive. He stood up, staggering, feeling adrenaline pump through his veins. Each step towards the corridor seemed to take an eternity. The mansion's silence, once a refuge for his sorrow, now seemed like an accomplice, hiding terrible secrets. Nocturno remained on his shoulder, a vigilant sentinel, its eyes fixed on the path ahead, guiding Arthur into the unknown, towards a truth that could destroy his world, but also, perhaps, restore it. Arthur's heart beat erratically, a melody of fear and a small but powerful spark of hope. He was ready to follow, to unravel the mystery, to face whatever the raven had to reveal, for the possibility of his daughter being alive was the only thing that mattered in his life. The west corridor, once just a forgotten area of the estate, now seemed like a tunnel to the unknown, each of Arthur's steps echoing in a silence that weighed like lead. Natural light barely reached there, and shadows danced on the walls, transforming familiar objects into menacing shapes. Nocturno, on his shoulder, remained motionless, the tension in its small body palpable, a contained energy that communicated directly with Arthur's racing heart. The raven no longer croaked, it simply watched, its eyes like two onyx beads, guiding him with unwavering determination. Arthur felt cold sweat trickle down his forehead, despite the mansion's cool air. His mind spun in a dizzying array of impossible scenarios. What if Sophia was involved? The idea was a chilling poison, a betrayal so profound it threatened to disintegrate what remained of his soul. He tried to push the thought away, but Nocturno's insistence and the memory of Sophia's evasive glances, of her voice that always seemed to hide something, were pieces of evidence that refused to be ignored. The image of his little daughter with golden curls and the smile that lit up his days was the only beacon amidst the darkness that was engulfing him. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly. Each door was a silent interrogation. Arthur reached out to touch a doorknob, but Nocturno gave a light peck on his ear, a clear warning to move on. The raven knew exactly where to go, and Arthur, with the blind trust of a desperate father, surrendered to its guidance. The animal's loyalty was a balm, proof that, even in the deepest solitude, there was a connection that transcended human understanding. Finally, Nocturno tilted its head towards a massive oak door, almost hidden behind an old tapestry. It was a door Arthur had never noticed, or perhaps never paid attention to, so absorbed in his grief. The raven descended from Arthur's shoulder, landing on the floor and pecking at the wood with a soft, yet insistent sound. Arthur's heart leaped into his throat. He knelt, his hands trembling, and touched the cold doorknob. There was a padlock, small and discreet but undeniably present. A wave of fury and despair hit him. Why a padlock? Who would lock a door in their own home? The answer, cold and cruel, began to form in his mind. Sophia. Her coldness, her control over that wing, the excuses about preserving memories. It all fit into a sinister pattern, his eyes filled with tears, not just of sorrow, but of a rage he never knew he possessed. The woman he loved, the mother of his daughter, could be capable of such monstrosity. With a superhuman effort, Arthur forced the padlock. Fragile, perhaps hastily placed, it gave way with a metallic snap that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, dusty room. The air was heavy, with a sweet, strange smell. Nocturno flew inside, landing on a table and looking at Arthur as if encouraging him to enter. Arthur hesitated for a moment, the fear of finding the truth colliding with the overwhelming need to know. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for an instant, and then, with the courage of a lion, took the first step into the room, ready to face the nightmare that awaited him, or to embrace the miracle Nocturno promised. Arthur entered the room, the heavy, warm air enveloping him. The darkness was almost complete, but his eyes, accustomed to the gloom, began to discern outlines. The sweet, strange smell intensified, mixing with a faint odor of mold and medicine. His heart beat so hard he could feel it reverberate in his ears. Nocturno, already inside, flew to a dusty dresser, and with a soft yet insistent croak, tilted its head towards a darker corner of the room. Arthur followed the raven's gaze, his steps hesitant. The faint light filtering through a gap in the curtain revealed, little by little, a small, almost hidden bed, and there lying was a tiny figure, covered by a sheet that seemed too large. Arthur's world stopped. It was her, his little flower, his daughter, with her golden curls now dull and tangled, her face pale and thin. She was there, breathing, an almost imperceptible movement of her chest that made the air catch in Arthur's throat. A wave of relief so potent it made him stagger, mixed with a searing pain at seeing the girl's fragile state. He approached, kneeling beside the bed. Her skin was cold to the touch, and her lips, once rosy and full of life, were now thin and parched. Her eyes were closed, eyelids trembling slightly, as if in a deep, troubled sleep. There was a glass of water on the bedside table, and next to it, an empty medicine bottle, with a label Arthur couldn't decipher in the gloom, but which exuded the sweet smell that hung in the air. The truth, cruel and undeniable, struck him like lightning. Sophia. It was her. The coldness, the excuses, the secrets. It all fit into a picture of betrayal that shattered his heart into 1,000 pieces. Tears streamed freely down Arthur's face, mixing with cold sweat. He reached out, hesitant, and caressed his daughter's tangled hair. "My little one," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, an almost inaudible sound. The touch seemed to awaken a faint moan in her, a subtle movement that brought more tears to Arthur's eyes. She was alive, yes, but in what condition? Drugged, isolated, wasting away under her own roof by her own mother's doing. The monstrosity of the situation was almost unbearable. Nocturno from atop the dresser croaked softly, a reminder. The raven's loyalty had unveiled the unthinkable. Arthur looked at his daughter, at her face marked by cruelty, and an iron resolve took hold of him. There would be no more pain. He would take her from there. With extreme care, Arthur picked up his daughter in his arms. She was light, fragile, her body nestled. He held her close, smelling her scent. Nocturno flew to his shoulder. Arthur left the dark room, carrying the miracle and the proof of betrayal, ready to bring light back into his daughter's life. Arthur emerged from the dark room, his little daughter nestled in his arms, a precious and fragile burden. The faint light of the west corridor, once gloomy, now seemed like a beacon of hope, though the darkness of betrayal still weighed on his soul. Each step was an act of faith and unconditional love. He felt the warmth of the girl's tiny body against his, a warmth he feared he would never feel again. Her golden curls, which once bounced with life, now rested dull on his shoulder, and the sweet smell of medicine still lingered, a cruel reminder of the ordeal she had endured. Nocturno, faithful and vigilant, flew ahead, landing on the doorknob of a door further down, as if indicating the way out of that isolated wing. The raven didn't croak, but its eyes, fixed on Arthur, communicated a silent urgency, a deep understanding of the situation's gravity. Arthur pressed his daughter against his chest, feeling the lightness of her body and her shallow breathing. He needed help, and fast. The image of Sophia, with her cold, distant face, haunted his thoughts, a mask of grief that now revealed itself as a facade for unimaginable cruelty. How could he have been so blind? Guilt gnawed at him, mixed with rage and overwhelming despair. He crossed the mansion's main corridor, the opulence of the marble and expensive paintings brutally contrasting with the fragility of the life he carried. Every object, once a symbol of his success, now seemed a silent testament to his failure to protect what he loved most. The mansion, which he had built as a refuge, had become a prison for his own daughter, a stage for the vilest of betrayals. Tears, which he thought he'd exhausted, rolled again, but this time they were not just of sorrow, but of a fierce determination for justice and restoration. Upon reaching the living room, the daylight streaming through the large windows revealed his daughter's condition more clearly. Her deep, dark circles, translucent skin, pronounced thinness. She looked like a small, wounded bird. Arthur sat on the nearest sofa carefully and nestled her even closer, kissing her cold forehead. "You'll be all right, my love," he whispered, his voice choked. "Daddy's here now." Nocturno landed on the coffee table, observing him with an almost human intensity. Arthur's mind raced, planning the next steps. First, his daughter needed urgent medical care. Then, Sophia. The confrontation would be inevitable, and the truth, however painful, needed to be exposed. Not for revenge, but for justice, for his daughter, for everything family should mean. He stood up, his daughter still in his arms, and walked towards the phone, feeling a renewed strength, a courage born from the deepest pain. The journey to heal his daughter and unravel Sophia's web of lies was just beginning, and Arthur was ready to fight for every shred of hope. Arthur, his daughter still nestled in his arms, dialed the emergency number, his hand trembling slightly. His voice, usually calm and controlled, was now an urgent mix of desperation and newly discovered pain. "I need an ambulance. To Blackwood Manor. It's my daughter. She's very weak, she seems. Drugged." The words came out rushed, each laden with the weight of months of agony and the terrible truth he had just unearthed. As he spoke, his tear-filled eyes never left the girl's pale face, who was breathing with alarming difficulty. Nocturno, perched on the coffee table, watched the scene with an almost human seriousness, its black eyes fixed on Arthur, then on the child, a silent guardian of secrets and hopes. The emergency service operator, with a reassuring voice, asked the necessary questions. Arthur answered mechanically, his mind divided between overwhelming concern for his daughter and the chilling image of Sophia, who now revealed herself as a mask of cruelty. His wife's betrayal was a blow that left him stunned, a wound that cut deeper than any physical pain he had ever felt. How could the woman he had loved, the mother of his own daughter, have planned such a monstrosity? The question echoed in his mind, unanswered. As he tried to process the dimension of the perfidy, he felt an overwhelming mix of rage, sorrow, and excruciating guilt for his blindness. Minutes later, which stretched like an eternity, the distant sound of a siren broke the opulent silence of the manor. Arthur felt momentary relief, but the tension remained, a tight knot in his stomach. He stood up, cradling his daughter with the utmost care, and went to the main door, where Nocturno was already waiting for him, perched on the doorframe. The raven seemed to share his anxiety, moving its head from side to side, as if attentive to every approaching sound. The medical team arrived quickly, with the efficiency Arthur expected from professionals. 2 paramedics entered, their faces serious upon seeing the girl's state, who seemed almost lifeless in her father's arms. With delicacy and professionalism, they examined her right there on the living room sofa, their movements precise and calm. Arthur watched every gesture, every expression on the paramedics' faces, searching for any sign, any word that could give him a glimpse of hope or confirm his worst fears. One of them, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a grizzled mustache, looked at Arthur with sincere compassion. "She's very weak, sir. We need to take her to the hospital immediately for more detailed examinations and treatment." Arthur nodded, tears returning to his eyes, but this time they were tears of fragile hope and renewed determination. He wanted to go with her, to hold her tiny hand. But he knew his presence there was crucial. There was a truth to be revealed, justice to be served, and he could not shirk his duty. As the paramedics prepared the stretcher and took her to the ambulance, Arthur kissed his daughter's forehead once more, whispering promises of unconditional love and eternal protection. Nocturno, with a low croak, flew to Arthur's shoulder, brushing its head against him with a delicacy that spoke of support and unwavering loyalty. As soon as the ambulance departed, taking his daughter to the care she so desperately needed, a heavy, oppressive silence descended upon the manor. Arthur felt an even greater emptiness, but this time it was an emptiness filled with an iron resolve. He turned, his eyes sweeping the room, and it was then that the main door opened again, with a soft creak. Sophia entered with her calm demeanor and her designer handbag elegantly slung over her arm, as if returning from an ordinary, carefree day. Her eyes, previously distant and calculating, now widened slightly upon seeing Arthur standing in the middle of the room with Nocturno on his shoulder, and the empty stretcher that had just left their home. A shadow of panic crossed her face for a brief instant, quickly replaced by an expression of forced, almost theatrical surprise. "Arthur? My God, what happened? Where's the ambulance?" she asked, her voice a little louder than normal, with a thread of nervousness that Arthur, now with eyes opened by the truth, was perfectly able to discern and despise. Arthur stared at her, deep pain and righteous anger mingling in his gaze, transforming it into a mirror of his torn soul. He didn't need words to express the depth of his discovery and the abomination of her betrayal. Nocturno, the raven, as if sensing the electrifying tension in the air, flapped its wings and let out a shrill croak, a sound that seemed to echo the truth about to be unveiled. Sophia's mask, once impenetrable, began to crack, revealing the cold, calculating woman behind the facade of wife and mother. The truth was there, hanging in the air, about to explode and change their lives forever. Justice, driven by a father's unconditional love and a raven's unwavering loyalty, was finally on its way, ready to illuminate the darkest corners of that manor. Sophia, with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes, tried to compose herself. Her right hand clutched the strap of her designer handbag so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "Arthur, why this hostility? Where is our daughter? What's going on here? I was so worried about her illness. I barely slept thinking about her, and now I see an ambulance leaving our house. What did the doctors say? Is she getting worse, isn't she? My heart is broken." Her voice was a murmur of false fragility, but Arthur could see the tension in every muscle of her face, the way her eyes darted away from his, seeking an escape route in her own lie. She took a step forward, extending her hand as if to touch him, but Arthur instinctively recoiled, and the gesture made her freeze. "Don't you dare, Sophia." Arthur's voice was low, but laden with a chilling authority she had never heard before. His eyes, once full of grief and confusion, now shone with terrifying clarity. "Enough of your lies. Enough of your charade. I know the truth." He paused, allowing his words to settle in the heavy air between them. "I know what you did to our daughter." Sophia's expression faltered, and for an instant the facade crumbled, revealing a glimpse of pure terror. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on Nocturno, who observed the scene with disturbing intelligence. "I found her, Sophia, locked away, drugged, wasting away in a dark room in our own home. A room you insisted on keeping off limits to preserve memories. What cruel irony." Arthur's voice rose a notch, pain transforming into indignation. "And don't think I acted on impulse. While you were out, I not only called the ambulance to save our daughter's life, but I also called my lawyer and the police. They are already on their way. I told them everything, Sophia, every detail, from months of your coldness to Nocturno's inexplicable insistence, who, unlike you, never abandoned her." Sophia's face paled, the blood seeming to drain from her features. The shock hit her like lightning, and the mask of surprise and concern fell completely, revealing contained fury and growing despair. Her eyes, once calculating, were now wide with panic, sweeping the room as if searching for an exit, an escape from the trap she herself had set. She shook her head frantically, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "No, you can't do this. You're crazy, Arthur. I'm your wife, your daughter's mother. This is a mistake, your madness." Nocturno, as if understanding Sophia's despair, let out another sharp croak, a sound that seemed to mock her attempt at denial. Arthur remained motionless, his posture unwavering. "There is no mistake, Sophia. The truth has been revealed, and justice finally will take its course." The sound of sirens, still distant but unmistakable, began to approach the manor, sealing Sophia's fate and promising a new dawn for Arthur and his little daughter. The air in the room grew dense with anticipation, and Sophia, her eyes fixed on the door, knew that her reign of cruelty had come to an end. The sirens grew in volume, their wail a clear and undeniable announcement. Sophia, her face disfigured by panic, recoiled like a cornered beast. The facade had crumbled, revealing the cold, calculating woman Arthur now saw. She tried to speak, But the words were lost in a gasp as the first police officers, followed by Arthur's lawyer, entered the room. The officers, in discreet uniforms, assessed the scene. The lawyer, his expression serious, approached Arthur, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Arthur, my dear, we are here," he said, his voice firm. Arthur nodded, his eyes fixed on Sophia, who was visibly trembling, her lips pale and eyes wide. "Mrs. Sophia Blackwood?" a police officer asked. Sophia shook her head in denial. Arthur, with Nocturno perched on his shoulder, stepped forward. "She is Sophia, and this is the woman who kidnapped and drugged our daughter for months, keeping her captive to simulate a terminal illness and inherit my fortune." His words, clear and painful, were a blow to the web of lies. Sophia's face contorted in fury and despair. "Lie! He's crazy! It's all made up! I'm her mother! I love her!" She screamed, her voice choked, trying to regain control. Nocturno, unable to tolerate the falsehood, let out a shrill croak, landing on the fireplace, its black eyes fixed on Sophia, an unwavering witness to the truth. The lawyer intervened, presenting the details. "Gentlemen, my client found the child a few hours ago in a locked room, drugged. The ambulance took her to the hospital. There is evidence of the forced padlock, the empty medicine bottle, and the deplorable state in which the girl was found." He gestured towards the corridor. The child was being kept in inhumane conditions. The police asked Sophia to accompany them. She resisted, her eyes pleading with Arthur, a last attempt at manipulation. He remained unyielding, his gaze hardened. "Sophia, you made your bed. Now lie in it," Arthur said, his voice cold and devoid of compassion. Tears streamed down Sophia's face, but Arthur knew they were tears of self-pity. With gentleness and firmness, the police escorted her out. Every step Sophia took was a farewell to a life of opulence and control. The silence that followed the departure of the police car was one of relief, of justice beginning to be served. Arthur felt an immense weight lifted, though the pain of betrayal and concern for his daughter still tormented him. He looked at Nocturno, who flew back to his shoulder, brushing its head against him. "You saved her." "My friend," Arthur whispered, stroking its feathers. The connection between them was a beacon of loyalty in a treacherous world. The manor, once a stage for lies, now seemed to breathe purer air, though the marks of cruelty were still etched within. Arthur knew his daughter's recovery would be long, but he was no longer alone. He had Nocturno, the truth, and the hope that his little flower would bloom again. Justice had taken its first step, and a father's love, driven by the raven, would begin to rebuild what had been broken. Arthur's life, focused on his daughter's healing and happiness, was about to begin anew. Arthur didn't waste a second. The relief of seeing Sophia taken by justice didn't erase the urgency burning in his chest. His daughter, she needed him. With Nocturno perched on his shoulder, a beacon of loyalty amidst the storm, Arthur rushed to the car. The raven, with a soft croak, seemed to understand his haste, the anguish the father felt. The drive to the hospital was a blur of anxiety. Every traffic light, every turn, seemed to stretch the distance between him and his little one. In his mind, he saw the girl's pale face, the fragility of her body, and a silent promise formed. He would do everything to bring her back to life, to erase the marks of cruelty she had endured. Upon arrival, the hospital was a labyrinth of aseptic corridors and cold lights. Arthur had to leave Nocturno at the reception, under the care of a kind nurse who, despite her surprise, understood the raven's importance to him. The separation was brief, but Arthur missed the familiar weight on his shoulder, a reminder that even now he was not alone. Guided by an attentive team, he was led to the pediatric unit. Arthur's heart pounded erratically when the room door opened. There she was, his little flower, lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by wires and monitors emitting soft beeps. The sight was painful. Her golden curls, once tangled, had been carefully combed, but the paleness of her face was even more evident under the white light. A small intravenous line was attached to her tiny arm, and she was breathing with the help of a small nasal tube. A doctor with a calm demeanor and kind eyes, Dr. Helena, approached Arthur. "Mr. Blackwood, your daughter is stable but very weak," she explained. Her voice soft. She was severely dehydrated and malnourished, and preliminary tests indicate the presence of sedatives in her system. It will take time for her to recover completely. Arthur felt a knot in his throat. The doctor's words confirmed his worst fears, but also brought the certainty that she was in good hands. He approached the bed, his body trembling. He took his daughter's tiny hand, so small and cold in his. "My little one. Daddy's here," he whispered, tears streaming freely. The touch seemed to provoke a slight tremor in the girl's eyelids, an almost imperceptible sign, but one that meant the world to Arthur. It was a glimpse of her inner strength, a promise that she would fight. Dr. Helena observed the scene with empathy. She is in a deep sleep induced by the medication, but her body is responding to treatment. With each hour, she grows a little stronger. Arthur nodded. Gratitude and sadness mingled in his chest. He wouldn't leave her side. He would stay by her side, every step of the recovery. Guilt still gnawed at him. The image of Sophia and her betrayal still haunted him. But the love for his daughter was a fire that burned stronger, purifying the pain and transforming it into unwavering determination. He sat in the chair beside the bed, holding his daughter's hand, his eyes fixed on her sleeping face. The silence of the room was filled only by the beeps of the monitors and his own breathing. That was his new world. A world where the mansion's opulence didn't matter, where the only wealth was the fragile life in his hands. He promised himself that the rebuilding of their lives would be done with love, patience, and the deepest gratitude. The journey would be long, but Arthur knew that with his daughter, he would find the strength to overcome any obstacle, and hope, like a small bud, began to blossom in his heart. Arthur never left his daughter's side. Days turned into a succession of hours spent in vigil, each minute filled with hope and anxiety. He sat in the chair beside the bed, holding her tiny hand, reading stories in a low voice, singing lullabies he hadn't sung in ages. His voice, once choked with pain, was now a constant murmur of love and promises, an attempt to fill the oppressive silence of the hospital room with his presence. Dr. Helena, with her patience and wisdom, visited them regularly, explaining the slow progress. "Her body is responding well, Mr. Blackwood. Hydration and nutrition are being re-established. The sedatives are being eliminated from her system. But the impact of months of deprivation and drugs will take time to be fully reversed." The doctor's words were a balm and a reminder of the long journey ahead. Arthur nodded, absorbing every piece of information, every nuance in her tone of voice. Nocturno, after some negotiations and the hospital staff's understanding of the Raven's importance to Arthur, was allowed to make short visits. It entered the room with an almost human dignity, perched on the windowsill or a small table, and watched the girl with its black, piercing eyes. Its presence was a silent comfort to Arthur, a link to the truth that had freed him, and a reminder of unwavering loyalty. The Raven seemed to share the same silent hope, a winged guardian of recovery. Each day, Arthur sought a new sign, a small miracle. And they came, faint at first, but undeniable. First, a slight tremor in his daughter's eyelids when he whispered her name. Then, an almost imperceptible movement of a tiny finger in his hand. One late afternoon, as Arthur read a fairy tale, he felt a faint squeeze in his hand, so weak he almost doubted it. His eyes widened and he looked at his daughter. Her eyelids moved again, and for a fleeting instant, one eye opened, a glimpse of blue that quickly closed. "Dr. Helena!" Arthur called, his voice hoarse with emotion. The doctor came quickly, examining the girl with a gentle smile. "These are good signs, Mr. Blackwood. Her body is fighting to awaken. It's a slow process, but we're on the right track." Guilt still lingered around Arthur like a shadow, the memory of his blindness and Sophia's betrayal. But with each small sign of his daughter's recovery, the light of hope grew stronger, dispelling the darkness. He allowed himself to cry, no longer from despair, but from deep gratitude and a love that renewed itself with every beat of his little one's heart. He knew the recovery wouldn't be just physical. There were emotional wounds to heal, memories to be rewritten with love and security. The manor, once a symbol of his opulent life and his pain, would now need to be transformed into a true home, a refuge of peace and joy. The fortune he possessed didn't matter, except as a means to ensure the best care for his daughter. Her life was the true wealth, the chance to rebuild her world. Arthur leaned in and kissed his daughter's forehead, feeling the faint warmth of her skin. "We'll get through this together, my love. Daddy's here, always." Nocturno, on its perch, let out a soft croak, like an amen to that promise. The journey was long, but Arthur was ready for every step, guided by unconditional love and faith in overcoming. Hope, which was once a fragile bud, now began to take deep root in his heart. Promising a future of healing and renewal, Arthur felt hope blossom in his chest, a promise that grew more tangible with each passing day. The hours dragged on in the hospital room, but they were no longer filled solely with anxiety, but rather with a sweet anticipation. He continued to read to his daughter fairy tales and adventures that he hoped would, in some way, reach her dormant mind. His voice, once a whisper of pain, now carried the melody of resilience, a song of love that sought to awaken the little one. Dr. Helena, with her always serene gaze, brought news that were like small rays of sunshine. "The sedatives are almost completely out of her system, Mr. Blackwood. Her brain is showing more activity. It's a good sign that awakening is near." Arthur squeezed his daughter's tiny hand, feeling the fragility but also the life that pulsed there. Nocturno, on its daily visits, perched on the windowsill, observing the girl with an almost protective intensity. Its black eyes seemed to share Arthur's vigil, a silent presence that reminded the father he was not alone on this healing journey. The raven, with a soft croak, sometimes seemed to respond to Arthur's unspoken thoughts, a winged confidant who understood the depth of his suffering and the purity of his hope. One sunny morning, as Arthur read about a magical garden, he felt a stronger movement in his daughter's hand. It wasn't a tremor, but a conscious squeeze, weak, yet unmistakable. He stopped reading, his heart pounding, his eyes fixed on the girl's face. Her eyelids, previously heavy, began to flutter with more vigor. And then, slowly, with a delicacy that broke Arthur's heart and filled him with indescribable joy, his daughter's blue eyes opened completely. They were cloudy, a little lost, but they were open, fixed on her father's face. A small sound, an almost inaudible whimper, escaped her lips. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice weak as a silken thread, but the word was clear, a balm to Arthur's tormented soul. Tears streamed down his face, no longer from sadness, but from overwhelming relief, from overflowing gratitude. He leaned in, kissing her forehead, the softest touch he could offer. "My little one. Daddy's here, my love. I'm here." Dr. Helena, who coincidentally entered the room, witnessed the moment. A warm smile lit up her face. "It's a miracle, Mr. Blackwood. She's back." She checked the girl's vital signs, her movements precise and gentle. "The recovery process will be long, for sure. There will be physical therapy, psychological support to deal with the trauma. But the most important thing is that she is conscious and reacting." Arthur nodded, barely able to speak, emotion overwhelming him. He held his daughter's hand, feeling the faint warmth, the life returning. Nocturno, on the windowsill, let out a more vibrant croak, like a song of victory. In that instant, the guilt Arthur carried began to diminish, replaced by the certainty that he would do everything to erase the shadows of the past. The manor, once a place of empty opulence, would now be a sanctuary of love and healing. He imagined the gardens, the games, the laughter that would echo again. The fortune, which once seemed a curse, would now be a tool to ensure his daughter had the best possible life, free from any pain or fear. He promised himself that every day would be dedicated to her happiness, to her rebuilding. That was the true treasure, the true inheritance. The healing journey was just beginning, but the first and most important step had been taken. A father's unconditional love, a raven's loyalty, and a child's resilience were ready to rewrite the future. His daughter's whisper, "Daddy," echoed in Arthur's soul like the most beautiful symphony. He knelt beside the bed, his face bathed in tears of pure gratitude, holding her tiny hand with a delicacy that feared breaking the magic of the moment. Her blue eyes, once cloudy, now tried to focus, a spark of recognition shining in them. "Yes, my love, Daddy's here. I'm here for you," he replied, his voice choked. Barely able to contain the torrent of emotions, the girl blinked slowly, a visible effort. Her lips moved again, and a fragile, almost imperceptible smile touched their corners. It was a tired smile, but real, and for Arthur, it was worth more than all the fortunes in the world. Dr. Helena, with her usual calm, approached, checking the monitors with a satisfied look. "It's a wonderful awakening, Mr. Blackwood. She's reacting very well. Now the most intense phase of recovery begins." She explained that, although the worst was over, the girl's body and mind would need a lot of support. "We'll start with gentle physical therapy to restore muscle strength, and a team of pediatric psychologists will be available to help her process the trauma. Patience will be your greatest ally, Arthur." Arthur nodded, every word from the doctor reinforcing his determination. He leaned in again towards his daughter. "You are so strong, my little one, so strong." He caressed her golden hair, feeling the soft texture under his fingers. The girl, with a noticeable effort, tried to lift her tiny hand to touch his face, but weakness prevented her. Arthur, noticing the gesture, brought her hand to his face, holding it there, feeling the faint warmth. Nocturno, who had approached, gently landed on the edge of the bed, observing the scene with its piercing eyes. A low, melodious croak escaped it, like a sound of approval and affection. The days that followed were a whirlwind of small progress and challenges. The girl began to eat small portions of soft foods, drink water on her own, and interact more. Her first clearer words, besides Daddy, it were simple questions. "Where am I? Where is Nocturno?" Arthur answered each one with unwavering calm and love, explaining everything gently, shielding her from the harsher truths for now. The physical therapist, a woman with a welcoming smile, began to work with her, gently moving her tiny arms and legs. Every small movement, every attempt to sit up, was a victory celebrated by Arthur with tears in his eyes and a heart overflowing with pride. He read to her, not just fairy tales, but stories about strong, brave children who overcame great challenges, always with a happy ending. The girl, though still fragile, began to show her personality, a sparkle of curiosity and resilience in her eyes. Nocturno was a constant presence. It not only observed, but seemed to interact, bringing small, shiny objects to the girl, who giggled softly at the sight of them. The connection between the raven and the child was palpable, a silent testament to the loyalty that had saved her life. Arthur saw in this interaction a sign of healing, a reminder that life, even after darkness, always finds a path to light. Arthur's guilt, though still present, was slowly being replaced by an unwavering purpose. He couldn't change the past, but he could shape the future. The manor, which once represented his prison of pain and deceit, would now be transformed into a home of love, laughter, and security. He had already spoken with his lawyer about the legal procedures to ensure his daughter's safety and well-being, and about how he would dedicate every fiber of his being to erase the shadows Sophia had cast over their lives. Dr. Helena, at the end of a week of remarkable progress, brought the news Arthur had been waiting for. "Mr. Blackwood, your daughter is responding wonderfully well. If she continues like this, we can consider hospital discharge soon, perhaps in a week or two. Recovery at home, in a familiar and safe environment, will be crucial for her emotional well-being." The words were music to Arthur's ears. He imagined the garden, her toys, her room, now free of any trace of the dark past. He knelt again beside the bed, holding his daughter's hand, who now looked at him with more clarity. "Soon, my love, we'll be home, our home, and there we'll build a garden of joy, just for you." The girl squeezed his hand, a gesture that spoke volumes. The path would be long, but with each day, Arthur's little flower blossomed a little more, and the promise of a future of healing and happiness became a vibrant reality, a true climax of hope and renewal. Arthur's promise of a garden of joy for his daughter echoed in his heart, transforming the anxiety of waiting into a sweet anticipation. The days that followed in the hospital were marked by remarkable progress, each a small miracle that nourished Arthur's soul. The girl, with her innate resilience, began to regain her strength. Her blue eyes, once cloudy and lost, now shone with renewed curiosity, observing the world around her with the innocence that had been stolen from her. The physical therapist, with her infinite patience, guided her in her first hesitant steps. Seeing his daughter stand up, supported by the gentle hands of the therapist and then by Arthur's, was a moment of pure emotion. Silent tears streamed down the father's face as he watched her, every small movement a testament to her will to live. She began to speak more, her sentences short and sweet, asking about the garden, about Nocturno, about the stories Arthur read to her. Her voice, once a silken thread, gained strength each day, filling the room with the melody of her presence. Meanwhile, Arthur dedicated himself to transforming the manor. He instructed the staff to remove any trace of Sophia's coldness, replacing it with vibrant colors, toys, and cozy furniture. His daughter's room was redecorated with an enchanted forest theme, walls painted with trees and animals, a soft, fluffy rug, and a multitude of books and dolls. The garden, once formal and untouched, was redesigned to include a playground, a swing, and colorful flower beds, a true refuge for the little explorer who would soon return home. Sophia's matter, though still a wound, was being handled by justice. Arthur knew she would face the consequences of her actions, and that certainty, without the need for explicit details, brought a form of peace. He felt no hatred, only a deep sadness for the woman she had become, and an even greater gratitude for having his daughter back. The focus now was on healing, love, rebuilding. Finally, the day of discharge arrived. Dr. Helena, with a warm smile, handed Arthur the papers, her eyes conveying the joy of seeing the family reunited. "She will still need a lot of love and support, Mr. Blackwood, but the worst is over. I am sure that in her home she will flourish." Arthur thanked the doctor and the entire team with a sincere handshake, his voice choked with gratitude. Nocturno waited in the reception, perched on the shoulder of a nurse who had taken care of it. Upon seeing Arthur and the girl, it flew to the father's shoulder, croaking softly, as if celebrating the reunion. The girl, with a wide smile, extended her tiny hand to stroke the raven's feathers, a scene that filled Arthur's heart with indescribable emotion. The journey back home was different. There was no longer desperate urgency, but rather a calm joy. As they passed through the manor gates, the girl let out a little cry of surprise and enchantment upon seeing the transformed garden. The house, once a place of shadows, now seemed to breathe new life. The scent of fresh flowers and sunlight flooded the rooms. Arthur took her directly to her room. The girl's eyes widened upon seeing the paradise that awaited her. She ran to the window, pointing to the swing in the garden, and then threw herself onto the soft rug, laughing. The sound of her laughter, pure and crystalline, filled the manor, dispelling the last shadows of the past. Arthur sat on the floor beside her, watching her play, feeling the fullness in his chest. Nocturno landed on the window, observing the scene with its wise eyes. That was their new beginning, a home built on unconditional love, overcoming adversity, and unwavering human connection. Justice had been served, and hope, now a robust tree, blossomed in every corner of that house, promising a future of peace and joy. The girl's pure, crystalline laughter, a melody Arthur thought he would never hear again, became the new anthem of Blackwood Manor. It echoed through the vast halls, chasing away and dispelling the last vestiges of silence and sorrow that had resided there. Every peal of laughter was a balm to Arthur's soul, a living reminder of the life that had been rescued and the hope that was reborn with each passing moment. Days unfolded into weeks and weeks into months, each a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the healing power of unconditional love. The little one, her blue eyes now full of a mischievous and curious sparkle, blossomed like a flower watered after a long and cruel drought. Her steps, once uncertain and faltering, gained firmness and agility. She ran freely through the lush gardens, her laughter mingling with the birdsong and the rustling of leaves, a sound Arthur cherished as the most precious of all treasures. Arthur watched every movement, every new smile, every discovery of his daughter with a devotion that completely filled his being. His own soul, once fragmented by pain, guilt, and blindness, now found itself whole, healed by the unconditional love he dedicated to the girl. He spent uninterrupted hours with her, reading fairy tales under the shade of an ancient tree, playing hide-and-seek among the rose bushes, and teaching her about the wonders of the nature that surrounded them. The manor, once a labyrinth of solitude and empty opulence, transformed into a refuge of warmth, affection, and vibrant joy. Nocturno, the faithful raven, remained a constant and comforting presence. It watched the girl play with its black, piercing eyes, sometimes gently landing on her shoulder for an unexpected caress, or bringing small, shiny objects that made her giggle with pure delight. The connection between the two was palpable, a silent reminder of the extraordinary bond that had saved the little one's life, a testament to intelligence and loyalty that transcended common understanding. Arthur often watched them from afar, a tender smile on his lips and a discreet tear in his eyes, knowing that Nocturno was not just a pet, but an irreplaceable family member, a winged guardian who had miraculously rewritten their destiny. Sophia's shadow, though present in memories like a distant scar, no longer had the power to cloud the joy and peace Arthur felt. He knew that justice had run its course and that his daughter was safe, free from any harm. Compassion, more than anger, filled his heart when thinking of the woman he had once loved, but who had irremediably lost herself in the darkness of greed. His focus was entirely on the present and the future, on building a life of fullness, love, and security for his little one. He had learned to forgive, not to absolve Sophia of her actions, but to free himself from the bitterness and weight of the past. With each sunset, a ritual was established. Arthur and the girl sat together on the wooden swing in the garden, watching the vibrant colors of the sky blend into shades of orange, pink, and purple. He hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth of her tiny body, the soft scent of her hair. The stories he read to her now were about the beauty of the world, the unbreakable strength of love, the importance of kindness, and the courage to overcome challenges. The fortune he possessed, once a burden, was now a tool to provide his daughter with every opportunity, every dream she could imagine. But true wealth, he knew, lay in the simple moments, in exchanged glances, in clasped hands, in the sound of her laughter. The manor, with its flourishing gardens and rooms filled with laughter and toys, was the home he had always desired, a sanctuary of peace where hope, once a fragile and almost extinct bud, had transformed into a majestic tree, its deep roots anchored in unconditional love, and its branches, reaching for the sky, promised a future of eternal love, unwavering joy, and a human connection that would withstand any storm. Life in its fullness had finally found its way back, richer and truer than ever. That swing under the sunset became Arthur and his daughter's private sanctuary. There, amidst the warm hues of twilight, they wove a future of promises. The girl, nestled in her father's arms, pointed to the first stars, and Arthur, with emotion in his throat, promised her that each one was a wish to be fulfilled. The manor, once an echo of pain, now resonated with life. In the morning, the smell of pancakes and children's laughter replaced the oppressive silence. The kitchen, once solitary, transformed into the heart of the home, where the little one, her tiny hands covered in flour, helped prepare cookies, her giggles filling the air. Arthur had stepped away from business commitments, dedicating himself entirely to his daughter. The fortune, once a burden, was now a tool to build a world of security and opportunities. He hired private tutors who taught her with patience, adapting to her pace. She showed a fascination for history books and animals, and Arthur took her to zoos and museums, observing the sparkle in her blue eyes with each new discovery. Nocturno, with its silent wisdom, was a constant and protective shadow. It followed the girl through the corridors, perched on the window as she drew, and participated in her games, hiding shiny objects that made her squeal with delight. The girl talked to the raven as if it understood every word, sharing secrets and joys. Arthur saw this connection as a miracle, a reminder that kindness and loyalty can come from the most unexpected sources. The girl's recovery was not just physical. It was a profound journey of emotional healing. With the support of a pediatric psychologist, she began to express her feelings and process her time in captivity. Arthur was always present, listening with an open heart, offering hugs and words of comfort. He explained that love was stronger than any darkness and that she was living proof of it. An inextinguishable flame of resilience. He taught her about the importance of forgiveness, not to absolve Sophia, but to free his own heart from the weight of resentment and move forward. The manor now received visitors, a sign that Arthur's social life was flourishing. Close friends, who had drifted away during his years of reclusion, began to frequent the house again, bringing the lightness of conversations and laughter. The girl, shy at first, soon opened up, charming everyone with her sweetness and intelligence. Arthur felt socially reborn, rediscovering the pleasure of companionship. He organized charity events in the garden, using his fortune to support causes that helped vulnerable children, an echo of his own experience and a commitment to altruism. One sunny afternoon, as the girl played in the garden with Nocturno, Arthur sat on a stone bench watching them. The golden sun bathed the scene, and her laughter was the purest melody. He closed his eyes for an instant, feeling the gentle breeze on his face and the peace that finally embraced him. The guilt that had once consumed him had been replaced by immense gratitude and an unwavering purpose. He had failed to protect his daughter in the past, but now each new day was a chance to make amends, to love with intensity, to build a legacy of kindness, resilience, and human connection. He stood up and walked over to them, kneeling to hug his daughter. "You are the light of my life, my love." he whispered, kissing her golden hair. The girl hugged him back tightly, and Nocturno, perched on her shoulder, croaked softly, like a silent guardian. That was his present, his future, his redemption. A family, rebuilt with unconditional love, courage, and the unwavering connection that bound them stronger than ever. Life, in its fullness, had finally found its true home, a sanctuary of hope and joy.